Hey folks, so if you just stumbled onto this video here and you haven't seen any of the other ones in this playlist, then there's actually a link down in the description of this video that will take you to any of the other videos in the 7-part playlist. And on top of that, at the beginning of the first video, I provide a little bit of background in terms of how this podcast came to be, the team at Epic Gardening, and just kind of how much of a fan I am of everything that they're doing over there with the company and the community that they're building and creating. So feel free to check that out. But other than that, let's go ahead and start diving into today's episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Epic Gardening Podcast. Hope you're doing well, hope your fall or winter is doing well, and maybe you're still gardening, maybe you're not. Either way, a good episode today to think about the 2022 season, especially if you were a recent beginner in the gardening world. So Jordan is back on the podcast from Mind and Soil. Jordan, you started gardening in, sounds like about 2013 or so, right?
Yeah, that's right. And then I'd say really started getting into it with my own space 2016.
Yeah, interesting how similar those stories map, because I left my job in 2016 to go full-time on Epic Gardening. So it's kind of an interesting little trajectory we both have here. But I still honestly consider myself maybe a somewhat advanced beginner in the world of gardening, because it's just so hard to know everything and learn everything. And I do have some seasons under my belt. You have some seasons under your belt. I'm curious if you have any tips for beginners that you wish you knew at the start.
Yeah, totally. So, when I go back to that first season, and I remember I got one tomato off of my vine, and it tasted so bad. Like, I didn't feed the soil anything. It just it tasted so papery. So the kind of takeaway or learning for me on that front was to start really small and to not be focused on the harvest or the yield. And I think that, we see a lot of these huge big bounties on Instagram and YouTube, etc. And that's after 5-6 seasons worth of gardening. And so in those, very first years, really focus on enjoying the process of getting the hands dirty, being off of technology, disconnected from all that, just less kind of nervous system being lit up by all these notifications and whatnot, and something more simple. And then over time, that bounty, that harvest is going to increase.
Yeah, I would say it's difficult even today for me to do that. Because I do love technology, and I do love, social platforms and stuff. And I guess that's sort of how Epic Gardening expressed itself. But I kind of have to separate my time now into working in the garden, like proper working for the business. And then there's also just enjoying the garden. So I try to do a lot of my garden enjoyment in the morning. So take a walk, go around, water, notice. And I'll make a mental note of some things that would be interesting to cover as far as, making content or the business. But I really have to now force myself to have split time in the garden, which is interesting.
Yeah, I relate on that so hard, where it's challenging when, both you and I, we've taken our love and our passion for gardening and started to turn it into profession. And I'm sure that you've been in the same position where it's literally everything is an opportunity for content and to be creating something that's going to help another individual as a gardener, whether that's the wins and an experiment that went really well, or the losses and the overwhelm and things that didn't go so well in the garden. All of that is content. And so you're constantly thinking should I be capturing this, or should I just be enjoying that garden? And for gardening time, and for me it's the same. It's I need to very consciously disconnect from being in working mode, working brain, and into Jordan, this is your gardening time. And to be honest, one of the things that I've grown to love most is weeding, because there's only so much content that you'd ever want to put out there for weeding, but it's such a nice way to just feel the just relaxation that comes from being in the garden and spending some time out there.
Yeah, it's weird. There's so many things I like these days that kind of just seem like chores maybe to everyone else. So weeding is a huge one. I mean, just off topic of gardening, washing dishes, picking things up, just I don't know, it seems sort of weird, but there's a lot of basic things that I like because it's a great time for your mind to not actually do anything.
Well, that's exactly it, right? We think back to what we were talking about earlier in the week in terms of directed attention. there's no like thinking that needs to go into how do I wash this dish or how do I pull this weed out. You're just doing it. So the moment and the reason why I believe that you would be enjoying that so much is because you're shifting your brain out of being in directed attention and into attention restoration.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I probably exist way too much in directed attention or split focus mode anyways.
Mm.
But we're talking a little bit about mental health stuff again. Let's go back to some beginner tips. I'll throw one out there. I know I've talked about it before. It's like just grow things you actually like to eat and don't grow things necessarily because they're easy. So, if you like growing tomatoes and peppers, yeah, they're a little more challenging than some of the more basic, spring crops like peas or lettuce. But if you don't like those, then just grow the things that you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of echo that, I think that the concept of like a challenging crop versus an easier crop has really shifted a lot over the course of the last 10 years. Because, like, you look at all of the amazing videos that you and the Epic Gardening team have put out there. And, all of a sudden, when you're trying something, say, like cabbage for the first time or cauliflower, rather than doing it completely blindly, you're able to kind of follow and see, like, all right, this is what I should be expecting. These are some of the things I should be doing to give myself a higher likelihood of success. So I'd like echo grow what you love, but also like spend an hour before starting those seeds just to kind of familiarize yourself with a couple of the videos that would be out there, so that you're not feeling like you're completely in the deep end, in the pitch black, no idea what you're doing as you start to get your hands dirty.
Yeah, and I think you also can kind of learn to bucket crops into specific sort of ways of growing. So when you think about like any green, for the most part, the rules are similar, right? I mean, if you get into, I guess, kales, yeah, they're a little bit more cold hardy than a lettuce, for example. And so there's some like little intricacies like that, but any plant you're growing and eating for its leaves, generally you can care for in the same or similar way. And so, yeah, getting a sort of grouping together,
Yeah.
educating yourself on like the for me, it helps to do the mechanics of the plant. Like, how does this plant actually function? Like, why are we growing it this particular way? Getting to the root of it, that helps me a lot.
Totally, yeah. And the last piece that I'd probably throw in is like approach it with an experimenting and failing mindset where like there's going to be so many flops and fails that happen in the garden, and that should be happening. If that's happening, then like you're doing something right, so long as you're taking like a little bit of a learning from that to apply into the next time that you start that seed or try that crop. And then what ends up happening is that like after 3, 4, 5 years of having some fails, learning from them, doing new little experiments, then you start to realize these big and beautiful bounties and harvests come spring and summertime.
Yep, totally agree with you. Awesome, some great beginner tips. Tomorrow we're going to continue on with the theme of the week, so stay tuned. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing. If you love a good deal, a good giveaway, or a good sale, then head on over to the Epic Gardening newsletter at epicgardening.com/newsletter. That's the only place I'm really putting out upcoming product releases, upcoming courses, giveaways of products, as well as sales on things and just a lot of gardening tips that I'm not putting out elsewhere. It's kind of like my personal diary to everyone who subscribes. So if you're interested in that, again, it's www.epicgardening.com/newsletter. You can also click the link in the podcast description, and I'll see you on over there. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.
Alrighty, well, let me know down in the comments what you thought of that episode. And then when you're all set and ready to move on to the next episode here, you can simply click on this tile right here, and that's going to take you to episode number 5, where Kevin and I discuss different mindfulness techniques that you can utilize to incorporate more mindfulness into your gardening practice. So I'll catch you on that next video.